Hello and happy Monday, everyone. Welcome back to Ticker Symbol Live, the channel that tries to put together ARK Invest's vision of the future with the stocks they're buying today. That is every day. So, one thing I'd like to do today is jump into a conversation about Zoom. Last week, we talked about Twilio, and Twilio enables communications between other businesses and their customers, right? So, regardless of where those customers are, Twilio tries to provide this omni-channel experience, being able to coordinate many different communications channels uh, so that customers can interact with those businesses wherever they are. Think Instagram, think text message, think email, think through their website and through chatbots, through pre-scripted video calls and audio calls and text. Zoom does the exact opposite, right? Zoom allows companies to talk amongst themselves even when they're distributed. For example, during the whole pandemic, when people couldn't get to their workplace, they had to use some other method of communication. And that sounds so obvious now, but if you rewind the clock about a year ago, nobody was really thinking about that kind of stuff because most meetings were happening still in physical rooms, right? Around physical tables, between physical people talking and exchanging physical sounds, right? Fast forward a year, and the discrepancy is gigantic. Zoom is a household name today. I challenge you to find somebody who has not heard of Zoom, let alone used it. And so I'll open with that question, trying to keep this experience as interactive as possible. Let me know if you use Zoom or if you use a competitor to Zoom. Is your workplace a Zoom-centric workplace, or do they use some other product? And do you know anyone who has never heard of Zoom? To me, it's like almost never hearing of Google at this point. And I'll show you in a minute how big of an impact Zoom has had since the pandemic started. It's going to blow you away, right? So I'll leave this question up on screen, but really what I just want to focus on is we're starting to draw some parallels between stocks now, right? So Twilio, again, enabling communications between businesses and their consumers. Zoom enabling communications between businesses and themselves. So inter and intra business communications, right? Reason I'm bringing that up is because, as we'll see in the data, let me show you the data and the ARK reactor. A, ARK has been buying a lot of Zoom, but B, Zoom and Twilio sit in the same funds. They both sit in ARKK, they both sit in ARKW, and Twilio, because it is a customer-facing communications enabler, also sits in ARKF, while Zoom currently does not. But, you know, those first two funds, ARKK and ARKW, are much bigger than ARKF anyway. So if we're looking at the data here, I have the ARK reactor in order of ARK rank here. So Tesla on top, Square currently number 3, moving down and up between ranks 2 and 3 with Teladoc as ARK continues to buy both stocks. And this movement is just due to price action, right? So Teladoc and Square always dancing around positions 2 and 3. Then we have Roku, Zillow, which we have talked about. Roku, we have talked about. Teladoc, we have talked about. So we're kind of going in order of ARK's highest conviction funds for a while, and then down and down the list until you hit Zoom, which is now rank 11. So let me see if I can just order this in a way that makes sense for you guys. Here we go. So the 11th biggest position of ARK overall is Zoom. They recently increased their position by a massive 7%. Remember, this is almost in their top 10 holdings. So a 7% increase is a big increase. They hold almost $900 million in Zoom today, right? It is jumped up 3 ranks, so from rank 14 to rank 11 in the recent trading days. So we should talk about it. So I'm going to pop that question back up on screen for a second while I look at the comments, and then we'll flip over to Zoom's Analyst Day investor deck, and we'll just see what kind of monstrous impact they've had on the workplace in the last 4 quarters, right? So let me know below if you have used Zoom or if you have not used Zoom, what you think about Zoom. And also, are you using Zoom for more than just workplace stuff? Are you using it for school? I see some comments saying, yes, school. Yes, I use Zoom. That's great. What do you use it for personal? Like, are you starting to meet with your friends online on Zoom calls? Or are personal calls still relegated to things like Google Hangouts, multiple group FaceTimes? Are you using more apps like that, or are you transitioning to Zoom for everything? Lots of good comments about using Zoom, or like not knowing about Zoom but having heard about Google if you live off the grid or something. I always appreciate those cheeky comments. So let's look at Zoom's investor relations deck, right? What's the deal with Zoom? Let me share my screen here and let's jump right into it. So this is from October 2020, so definitely well after the pandemic started, but it's delayed about a quarter, right? So we're not going to be looking at their most recent quarter's earnings, but I'm sure, as you can guess, they're going to be stellar because the demand for Zoom has increased unbelievably dramatically, right? So the future of work, the future of Zoom, and I would start to argue the future of communications in general. Lots of comments saying using Zoom multiple times per day. That's exactly how I feel. I'm on Zoom all the time. It is definitely my default communication method. So I'm right there with you, right? So we're in a new digital world, in an all digital world. The past is gone and it's not coming back. A thesis that this channel shares, by the way, that the convenience of online and internet enabled things is not going to be dismissed just because doors start to open again. We need to rebuild our companies and our organizations, and ultimately we need to rebuild ourselves to be successful in this new digital future. Zoom is not the future. Zoom is the present. This is our present reality. And this is a theme that you're going to see with all of ARK Invest's highest conviction stocks. Teladoc is not the future of medicine. Telemedicine is the present state of medicine. Digital wallets is not the future of banking. It is the new present of banking. Tesla is not the future of point-to-point travel. It is becoming the present in point-to-point travel. Zoom is not the future. Zoom is the present. This is our present reality. Just tying it back to the rest of the channel. Zoom is a driving force enabling communication and collaboration worldwide. Lots of comments in the chat about using it for school as well as work. And Zoom understands that need, and those are separate needs, right? The classroom is different than the workplace, and Zoom specifically calling that out in their investor deck, right? Staying connected when physical gathering is not possible. The obvious mission statement of Zoom in one clear line. Physical, whether it's possible or simply unpreferred, right? Zoom is working to address that market. And finally, this is the part that I really want to show you that I'm super excited for. If you look at the amount of meeting minutes that they have enabled in the last 3 quarters, so since the pandemic started, remember this is a 1 quarter old presentation because it's updated annually. 3.3 trillion minutes of meetings enabled last quarter alone. And just to be clear, I did the math on this. That is 6.3 million years of minutes enabled in 1 quarter. 6.3 million years, right? So Zoom is really enabling people to meet online. This isn't just a little bit of a bump due to the pandemic. This is a dramatic shift in how people are meeting, and Zoom is capturing an outsized gain in that cultural shift of moving meetings to the digital era. That's what I'd really like to highlight here. Zoom in a snapshot, 355% year over year revenue growth, 2.6 billion analyzed revenue run rate, right? Lots of unbelievably big growth numbers, right? 19x increase in year over year quarter, like annualized growth, right? This is explosive customer growth. And one thing I want to say is when you have a company, sometimes the limiting factor in your growth is yourself and your infrastructure. Like, I'm not so sure that Zoom couldn't have grown more if they were ready to handle all of the demand. I remember when the pandemic first started, Zoom was kind of going down sometimes. Zoom was doing the best it can. Zoom was rolling out like all these emergency plans and things like, hey, we're trying to connect you, but meeting sizes are going to shift for a while. Discord had the same problem. I run a Discord community. The link is in the description below. And for a while, Discord was like, hey, here's how we're enabling communications in real-time chats and in voice and in video for a while we're trying to figure out how to have our infrastructure serve the most people most reliably due to this crazy increase in demand, right? And just to be clear, let me just show you that crazy increase in demand for one more second here. This is a monstrous amount to scale, between 101 billion and 2.6 trillion minutes in one quarter to the next. This is a factor of 26, right? So their infrastructure, they needed to look inside their own company and just say, how do we make the most of this with what we have and scale in a way that doesn't disrupt our existing business very, very quickly, right? So just pointing out that they've done a phenomenal job as well, keeping their service alive for this demand, right? And as a result, they've grown exponentially, right? So customers with more than 10 employees, so businesses they serve with 10 plus employees, have grown 458%, right? Customers with over $100,000 in trailing 12-month revenue has more than doubled, and customers with over $1 million in annualized recurring revenue has more than tripled, right? From 27 to 88. Upmarket movement. So they're capturing new markets. They're capturing a diverse amount of markets, right? So financial services, technology, consumer goods and retail, and then healthcare and pharma, forming their four biggest cohorts, and then industrials, business services, energy, telecom, and real estate, right? And I would argue that this is simply a function of the size of the average business here, right? Financial services, technology, consumer retail, and healthcare and pharma, and industrials tend to be bigger companies with lots more people and thus lots more meetings, right? So Global 2000 segments spending over $100,000 in annual recurring revenue, right? They're just capturing dozens and dozens of these gigantic companies up because Zoom is the trusted platform for this type of communication. International leads with 629% year-over-year growth. So not just new markets in terms of industries, but in terms of geographies, right? United Kingdom, Japan, and Canada making up most of that, followed closely by Australia and Germany, and then down and down the list. So Zoom is expanding both horizontally and vertically, right? It's coming into new verticals and addressing those issues, as well as new markets and locations addressing those geographies, right? And we're just going down and down the list. And all I'm trying to give you for is a flavor of the way Zoom is looking at itself and trying to grow, right? But these numbers are phenomenal because the use case is so obvious. Businesses need to communicate to their customers in a digital way, Twilio. Businesses need to communicate internally with themselves in a digital way, Zoom, right? High demand for large virtual events. So this is an interesting thing too. Not only is Zoom enabling, this type of intra-company communication, but think about all of the seminars that have been replaced with webinars, all of the conferences that have been replaced with internet conferences or e-conferences, all of the physical events, we recently went to a baby shower that was fully online. It was a 1-hour Zoom call that was a baby shower, right? People are doing all sorts of personal events online through Zoom because they're unable to meet in person. People are unable to travel. That's one thing. And people don't want to go to large gatherings. That's another thing. So both the actual logistics of on and off a plane or taking long car rides to foreign destinations and just meetings with lots and lots of people are two things that people are trying to avoid, and Zoom enables them to avoid those things, right? And we're seeing that reflected right here, right? Large demand for large virtual events, whether they're conferences, whether they're, baby showers, whether they're an event that had a physical analog to it earlier or not, right? One really interesting comment that I do want to highlight right now. Looking forward to VR seminars in the future. I'm looking forward to this too. I think interactive, online, virtually enabled seminars are going to be critical to the workplace and to education. You can imagine having a giant physics lecture that is not only online and enabled by Zoom, but also has some interactive component to teach kids some physics lesson that takes place in virtual reality so they can try things, interact with things, reset things, try new things, and arrive at an interesting conclusion that they couldn't have without that interaction. So, great call out in the chat. And of course, you can look at their financials and, you're going to see an insane amount of growth, an insane amount of long-term vision. They're aggressively putting money into research and development, right? 10%, 12%, looking for, reinvesting in themselves for outsized growth in the future. Of course, they're a digital product, so they spend a lot in sales and marketing. I mean, we talked about their need to scale their infrastructure rapidly, which I'm sure they're still doing on the back end, right? So they have a lot of stuff going on under the hood to enable all of these unbelievably high demand meeting minutes going on virtually, right? Down the list. So the other thing I wanted to touch on is Zoom Phone and Zoom Room, right? So the evolution of communications technology is converging, right? This chart is a little small, so I'll read it out to you just for a second. There are physical solutions and there are physical solutions, right? Hardware and video, hardware that supports video that sit inside physical conference rooms. And then there are digital solutions, right? Think the VoIP part of the package, right? So on-premises phone systems and then hardware that enables video conferences. Then everything moved to cloud phone-based and online meetings. And now things are converging into one coherent stack of solutions enabling modern video communications, right? Cloud video conferencing, cloud phone systems, team messaging, and an open platform that lets you tailor that solution to your business's needs, right? So what used to be disparate solutions, the TDM phone system and telephone conferencing, are now converging to one total communications stack. And we saw that with Twilio previously, and we're seeing that here again now. The modern phone solution, centralized management of communications that's secure and reliable. Remember, Zoom also enables things for healthcare and finance. And we've talked previously and extensively about the types of compliances that need to happen when you're doing things for finance, for healthcare, etc., right? The security involved in that. So Zoom focuses on that as well because it's also enabling, client or patient meetings as well. Zoom between a doctor and a patient, Zoom between a financial advisor of some kind and their client. These are privileged conversations, Zoom conversations between lawyers and their clients, etc. So there has to be some method of security and compliance and things that Zoom is taking care of to allow these privileged interactions to occur. And, you can go down the list. They have new product launches associated with what they're doing. And we can talk more about their international expansion. So in 2019, which is just 2 years ago, right, they were in 2 countries. And in August of 2020, they were in 43. So aggressively attacking international expansion because, the pandemic was an international problem, right? So this market need is global. And Zoom has found itself in this position of being a rapidly growing global country. So not only scaling in terms of the amount of minutes it supports, but how, when, where, in what languages it supports those minutes, right? And the growth numbers in this presentation, again, are going to be unbelievable. I'm kind of blowing past them because the numbers are just, I'm starting to think that the numbers indicate how much and how fast they could scale and how much demand they could capture versus what's really out there. The demand for Zoom, I think, is still higher than what Zoom supports because we're continuing to transition more and more online. Think about all the businesses that are still working to transition, still realizing that this is not a 2-week, 2-month, 2-quarter problem, but this is a massive paradigm shift. So next quarter, I expect the numbers to be even higher. We've seen that, the growth has continued well past the first quarter here, right? So continuing to grow quarter after quarter. Their best quarter was a year into the pandemic, right? That's what I'm trying to convey here. And if we go all the way down, one thing I'll close with, customer size, geography, top verticals. So we're getting into the point where they're just reiterating and summarizing the presentation, right? So I'll leave it here. Geography, greatly expanding. Customer size, greatly expanding and moving upstream. Top verticals are technology, financial services, professional services, so some of those privileged services, manufacturing, retail, and healthcare. The last thing I'll point out on this stream is the actual Zoom stock. So the Zoom stock had a high of $560 last October, right? That was kind of when the market topped and then leveled off for a little bit. So they are currently 40% off of their recent high, and their immediate high, they're still 25% down. And this is due to those, we saw a rotation out of tech and out of growth stocks into value stocks. Zoom is one of the kings of growth stocks, of course, in the modern era, having grown a massive 730% since the start of the pandemic, roughly. And that, of course, is attributed to the fact that they have a real market need. It's no accident that Zoom grew that much. We just saw that the meeting minutes that they've supported grew by 26x. So that should give you an idea of the demand. They've swept into pop culture. They were heavily featured in South Park's Pandemic Special, for example. Zoom is a product that appears in many modern shows when people are making fun of having Zoom meetings with each other. We all use Zoom. Everyone in this chat has said they've used or at least heard of Zoom. Or, another thing is when businesses decide not to use Zoom, they're consciously deciding not to use Zoom, right? That's the last thing I want to point out. They've tried Zoom and they're going with a different solution. It's not like Zoom is never entering their conversation, even if they don't try it. They're making a conscious decision, kind of the same way that a few years ago, people have consciously decided not to watch Game of Thrones, right? And you always met those people who are like, yeah, I didn't watch that show. But it's like, they definitely knew what the show was about. They definitely heard about it. Zoom is kind of the same way, right? Zoom is a staple household name that you're making a conscious decision not to use when you say you're not a user of Zoom. Same with Google, right? And there's value in doing that, but that's the market leader position I want to share with you as my feeling of the brand equity of Zoom. People in the chat saying they use GoToMeeting. I use GoToMeeting sometimes when people throw that link at me. It's fine. I like GoToMeetings as well, but my method of preferred communication is Zoom. I want to spend 2 minutes here. This channel has been doing very well recently. I've unlocked channel memberships. So one thing I wanted to ask you before I wrap this up is let me know what you're interested in, if you're interested in YouTube memberships, right? Is that something you even care about? And if so, what benefits would you like to see? How else can Ticker Symbol Live or Ticker Symbol U provide value in new ways, right? So let me know in the comments below, is YouTube membership something you partake in? Do you want private live streams? Do you want me to do Q&A sessions? What kind of stuff? Do you want access to dashboards and data and like the stuff that's going on under the hood? I'll show you a quick example here. If we go back to the ARK reactor, how do I do that here? One thing I can share with you is some of these dashboards, right? So a lot of people have been interested in seeing this type of data. I want to make you aware that I have something called the State of the ARK, which I have released to some of my Patreon members. All I'm saying here is there's a way to make this data available so that you can actually play with it. So what this is just an explorer of ARK Invest funds. It's an interactive dashboard that has a public URL that you can log into, and you can go back one market week and you can see all of the changes in their holdings in the bar chart on the right day by day. And it just reminds you of how their assets under management are fluctuating day by day. So you can go click on ARKK and see, hey, ARKK has increased 1.54% since the most recent trading day. Here's what ARKK is made up of on this date. Here it is in a nice little box plot, right? So on and so forth. And this is already available to my Patreon members, but it's not available to my YouTube members because literally no one has asked for that. So, I don't make it supported in a way where both sets of people can click that link. So there's a lot of work I can be doing as like the manager of a little community now to provide you more value, right? If you let me know what you find most valuable or what you would find most valuable, I'm happy to try to cater to that. More live streams, more Q&As, access to new sets of data, coverage of other things, right? Other funds, if you think that's valuable. So let me know in the comments below if that's something that even interests you. So there's my little plug for that. And now both channels qualify for that bonus. So I'm happy to spread things out as it makes sense between ticker symbol U, the main channel, Big Ideas channel, and then ticker symbol live, the data channel, the stock channel, the analysis channel. YouTube memberships is that join button that you can see if you go to ticker symbol U. There's a button next to the subscribe button called, it just says join, and it gives you extra perks for that channel specifically. My extra perks right now are things like super chats and emojis and like ways to differentiate yourself in the video comments. I haven't put a lot of focus on it because the community has not asked me to put a lot of focus on it. And this is a community-driven channel, right? People tell me what they want to learn about or what they don't understand about ARK Invest's research, and ticker symbol U slowly tackles those things. And then there's been a lot more questions about the data, the analytics, the individual stock picks, and all that. So I created ticker symbol live as a reflection of that. And that made sense to me because, again, ARK Invest has two websites, right? They have ARKinvest.com, which focuses on their research, which is ticker symbol U. And they have ARKfunds.com, which focuses on their stock picks and their funds, which is ticker symbol live. So that's what you're seeing here, the manifestation of how I am trying to interpret and add value to ARKfunds.com, right? The changes of their holdings every day, which they upload to ARK-funds.com. And if you want some special member-only perks associated with the channel that follows ARK-funds.com, now is your chance to tell me. Maybe that even includes Zoom calls with me. Who knows, right? So plugging it back right into the Zoom video for the day, we took a look at Zoom. We see that it's a depressed stock right now, 40% down off recent highs. We used ARK Invest data, their changes in holdings, to find that Zoom was an outsized buy recently. So again, what you're seeing here is looking at changes of data day by day of ARK Invest's 5 actively managed ETFs, soon to be 6 with the inclusion of ARKX. And we see that Zoom is their outsized highest conviction buy in the recent trading days, an increase in their position by over 7%. And this is data that I make available to my Patreons currently and can be made available through the mechanism of YouTube memberships should you wish to do so. So I will wrap up with that. It's always a pleasure doing these daily live streams. I am looking forward to doing them daily. Let me know in the comments below if daily is too little, too much, if there's something you want me to add or take away from these live streams. I tried to keep them to around half an hour, so I'm doing a very good job of that right now. Otherwise, I will see you tomorrow. As always, this is Ticker Symbol Live. My name is Alex, reminding you that the best investment you can make is in you. Thanks for watching.